There is a version of you that you keep at a distance, not because it is weak, but because it is powerful. You feel it in your quiet moments, in the ideas you hesitate to speak, in the actions you delay, in the decisions you postpone. Fear rarely guards your limits. More often, it guards your potential. The life you say you want stands behind the door you are afraid to open. Most people are not imprisoned by failure. They are imprisoned by self-avoidance. You learn to be acceptable before you learn to be authentic. You learn to be approved of before you learn to be honest. And so you built a personality designed for safety, not truth. But safety has a cost. It slowly trades your aliveness for predictability. Inside you lives a contradiction, the part that wants comfort and the part that wants expansion. Growth will always feel like danger to the comfortable self. That is why your next level feels unnatural. It is not wrong, it is unfamiliar. The psyche interprets unfamiliar power as risk. That is why stepping into your real voice makes your heart race. That is why setting boundaries feels like guilt. That is why leadership feels like exposure. But fear is not a stop sign, it is a compass. It points directly toward the identity you are meant to develop, the traits you admire, but hesitate to embody. Courage, directness, intensity, originality are not random attractions. They are signals of your unfinished self. Stop asking, what if I fail? Ask instead, what if I remain half-formed? There is a deeper tragedy than falling. It is never fully standing. The longer you delay your transformation, the heavier your mask becomes. And eventually the mask demands more energy than the truth. You do not become whole by removing your darkness. You become whole by integrating it. Your anger can become clarity. Your sensitivity can become perception. Your ambition can become creation. What you hide does not disappear. It waits. And what waits eventually demands to be lived. The person you are afraid to be is not reckless. They are integrated. They speak when silence is dishonest. They move when hesitation is self-betrayal. They choose meaning over approval. They accept being misunderstood as the price of being real. Your future is not built by comfort. It is built by identity, courage. Each day you either rehearse your fear or rehearse your truth. Choose truth often enough, and fear loses authority. Do not aim to be liked. Aim to be aligned. Become who you are afraid to be, and you will no longer be afraid of who you are. Fear is one of the most misunderstood forces in human life. Most people see fear as a signal to stop, a warning that danger lies ahead, and in some cases it is a sudden car horn, a precarious ledge, an aggressive animal. These are moments when fear serves a protective purpose. But in the majority of the moments that shape our destiny, fear is not a marker of real danger. Fear is a guardian not of our lives, but of our potential. It emerges not to save us from external threats, but to keep us safely within the boundaries of what we already know, what is familiar, what is socially acceptable. Every ambitious thought, every daring idea, every impulse toward personal growth carries with it a tremor of fear. That tremor is not the world warning you to stop. It is your mind warning you to stay comfortable. It whispers, you cannot do this, you are not ready, it is too risky. And we often obey without examining whether these warnings have merit. The truth is that fear often appears at the threshold of opportunity. When a person considers stepping into leadership, speaking their truth, creating something original, or pursuing a dream, fear arises not because failure is inevitable, but because the new path threatens the identity that has been safe, predictable, and approved by others. Fear disguises itself as rationality. It makes us overestimate the likelihood of catastrophe while underestimating our capacity to adapt. It magnifies the consequences of action and minimizes the consequences of inaction. We feel safer by doing nothing, even if doing nothing slowly erodes our vitality, our sense of meaning, and our untapped abilities. The irony is that fear rarely signals real danger. What it signals is exactly where growth is possible. The edge of discomfort, the unfamiliar challenge, the audacious move. These are the spaces where the self expands. Fear often rises precisely when our potential is about to stretch, because the human mind is wired to protect the current identity, the familiar persona, the known quantity. It is the mechanism that says, stay small, stay predictable, stay safe, even when staying safe is exactly what keeps us from realizing the depth of our capacity. People who achieve extraordinary things learn to reinterpret fear. They no longer see fear as a stop sign, but as an indicator of where meaningful action lies. They recognize that the shaking in the stomach, the doubt in the mind, the tension in the body are not indicators of doom but signals of potential. Every moment of hesitation is a moment when fear is guarding the doorway to a larger self. The person who ignores fear or allows it to dictate choices ends up living in a narrow perimeter, constantly safe but never alive in the full spectrum of capability. To honor fear without surrendering to it is to acknowledge its presence, respect its caution, and then move forward anyway, understanding that the danger it promises is often imaginary and the opportunity it conceals is real. Fear is a sentinel at the gates of your potential, and your courage is the key to opening them. That human beings are inherently social creatures. From the earliest days of life, we are conditioned to seek approval, validation, and acceptance from those around us. Families, schools, workplaces, and communities reinforce the notion that to belong is to survive, and over time, this need to belong can shape the very core of our identity. Social acceptance is not inherently harmful. It helps us form connections, collaborate, and navigate complex societies, but it carries a hidden cost when it becomes the primary driver of who we are. Many people craft versions of themselves that are carefully designed to meet external expectations rather than reflect their inner truth. These carefully constructed personas are safe. They are liked, admired, or tolerated, but they are rarely authentic. In the pursuit of approval, individuals learn to suppress aspects of themselves that might provoke criticism, discomfort, or rejection. Ambition is hidden behind humility. Opinions are watered down to consensus. Emotions are muted to maintain harmony. And dreams are shelved because they feel risky or unconventional. Over time, the repeated prioritization of acceptance over authenticity shapes a life that looks good from the outside but feels hollow from within. The paradox is that the very thing people strive for, belonging and recognition, can imprison them. The more one seeks validation from others, the more their behavior is dictated by outside judgment, leaving less room for genuine self-expression. A person may achieve outward success, gain friends or followers, and accumulate accolades, yet feel a persistent sense of emptiness or disconnection, because their identity has been molded to fit a social template rather than their own inner compass. The inauthentic identity becomes a mask that protects from rejection but isolates from true connection. People may feel trapped because they have invested years in maintaining this constructed self, and the thought of revealing their authentic thoughts, feelings, or ambitions feels dangerous. Vulnerability becomes terrifying because it could shatter the carefully maintained approval they have worked so hard to earn. The cost of social acceptance is subtle but profound. It leads to compromise of values, avoidance of risk, and the gradual erosion of self-trust. When the priority is to please others rather than to honor one's own convictions, life becomes a series of rehearsed performances rather than lived experiences. Breaking free from this trap requires self-awareness and courage. It involves noticing when choices are being made to fit expectations rather than to serve one's own growth, and slowly reclaiming the parts of the self that have been suppressed. Authenticity demands the willingness to risk disapproval, criticism, or misunderstanding in exchange for alignment with one's own truth. True fulfillment does not come from being liked universally, but from being fully oneself. The liberation of embracing authenticity over approval allows a person to connect with others on a deeper level, make decisions with clarity, and pursue paths that resonate with their genuine desires. Social acceptance can be comforting, but when it dominates our identity, it becomes a cage that limits potential, stifles creativity, and distances us from the life we are truly capable of living. That growth is rarely comfortable. It challenges the familiar structures of life and stretches the boundaries of identity. The process of becoming more than we are, more capable, more confident, more visible, triggers a deep sense of unease because it involves stepping into territory that the mind has not yet mapped. Power, in its many forms, influence, authority, self-mastery, or creative ability, is inherently unfamiliar to those who have not exercised it before. Unfamiliarity produces tension because the brain interprets novelty as potential threat. From an evolutionary perspective, the unknown is dangerous. The body responds with a surge of stress hormones, the heart rate increases, muscles tighten, and fear rises, signaling that caution is required. Yet, in the modern context, these physiological alarms often arise not from true physical danger, but from the prospect of personal expansion. When you consider stepping into a leadership role, expressing your ideas boldly, or pursuing a dream that feels beyond your current capacity, your body reacts as though you are facing a predator when in reality you are facing opportunity. Power feels unsafe because it requires the development of skills, the assumption of responsibility, and the willingness to be seen and judged. It demands that you shed old limitations and habits that have previously kept you within the safe boundaries of comfort. Every step forward into growth contradicts the familiar narratives you have told yourself about who you are, what you deserve, and what is possible. This tension creates discomfort that can be mistaken for failure, weakness, or unworthiness. Many people retreat at this moment, interpreting the fear as a signal to stop, to wait, or to remain small. They prefer the illusion of safety over the real, though unfamiliar, opportunity for transformation. Yet growth cannot occur in the zone of comfort. It is only when you move into the space where power feels unfamiliar that true expansion happens. Each moment of unease is evidence that you are crossing the threshold into a new level of capacity. The initial discomfort is a sign that your identity is evolving, that your capabilities are stretching, and that your potential is being claimed. The challenge is to persist through the tension, to allow unfamiliarity to become a teacher rather than a threat. Over time, the new skills, habits, and confidence solidify, and what once felt alien and dangerous becomes familiar and natural. Growth requires patience, courage, and the willingness to sit with the disorientation that accompanies stepping into personal power. The fear and discomfort are not warnings but signals that you are moving toward the most meaningful expression of yourself. To embrace growth fully, one must understand that power will always feel unsafe at first, and the path forward is to persist through the unfamiliar until it becomes your new normal. Fear is often misunderstood as an obstacle, a signal to retreat, or a warning of imminent danger. While fear does have protective functions in life, the majority of the fears that arise in moments of personal growth, creativity, and self-expression are not indicators of real harm. Instead, they serve as a compass, pointing directly toward the areas in which we are meant to expand. The higher self, the version of ourselves capable of greater courage, insight, and authenticity, is almost always found just beyond the boundary of fear. This is why fear is such a powerful indicator. It identifies exactly where our potential lies and where transformation is waiting to occur. Every time you feel your stomach tighten, your mind hesitate, or your heart race in response to a choice or opportunity, these are signals that you are approaching the edge of your comfort zone, the very edge where your higher self resides. Fear appears because stepping into your higher self requires a departure from familiarity. It demands that you take risks, speak truths that may be unpopular, and act with integrity even when approval is uncertain. The mind resists this because it prefers safety and predictability. It wants you to remain within the bounds of what is known. But the higher self thrives in uncertainty, in challenge, and in the tension between what is comfortable and what is possible. Recognizing fear as a directional signal rather than a stop sign changes the way you engage with it. Instead of interpreting it as an enemy to be avoided or a weakness to suppress, becomes a guide that shows where attention, effort, and courage are most needed. Fear highlights the areas where growth, mastery, and authenticity are waiting to be claimed. The people who achieve extraordinary personal and professional development do not ignore fear. They follow it deliberately. They notice which situations provoke fear, analyze why it arises, and then move forward with conscious intention. By doing so, they allow fear to point them toward the next level of their evolution. Each encounter with fear is a choice point: retreat into safety or advance into self-actualization. The higher self is found on the path that is feared, not avoided. Moreover, fear serves as a mirror, reflecting the parts of yourself that have been undeveloped or denied. If you consistently feel fear when expressing your opinions, pursuing your ambitions, or setting boundaries, it reveals that these are the areas where your power and agency are strongest and where integration is most necessary. Fear identifies exactly where your potential has been waiting, sometimes for years, to be realized. Learning to reinterpret fear in this way, as a compass pointing toward your higher self, is a fundamental shift. Transforms anxiety into insight, hesitation into direction, and discomfort into opportunity. By following fear rather than fleeing it, you align with the growth, authenticity, and personal power that define the highest version of yourself Every person carries within them traits, emotions, and impulses that are suppressed, ignored, or judged as unacceptable. These traits often emerge in childhood as a response to social conditioning, family expectations, or cultural pressures. Sensitivity may have been punished, ambition discouraged, anger shamed, or creativity dismissed. Over time, these suppressed aspects of self are pushed into the shadow, leaving a person functioning in a narrowed range of expression. But suppression does not erase these qualities. It merely buries them. They continue to exist beneath the surface, influencing thoughts, decisions, and behaviors in ways that are often indirect and self-limiting. Integration is the process of acknowledging, understanding, and reclaiming these hidden aspects of ourselves so they can be transformed into strengths. A suppressed trait is not a weakness. It is potential energy that has yet to be harnessed consciously. For example, sensitivity, when hidden, may manifest as emotional volatility or avoidance of connection. When integrated, that same sensitivity becomes empathy, heightened awareness, and the ability to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics. Ambition, if suppressed out of fear of criticism, may cause a person to settle for mediocrity, yet when reclaimed, it becomes the drive to achieve meaningful goals and create lasting impact. Even emotions like anger, often stigmatized, carry information and energy that can be redirected into clarity, assertiveness, and boundary setting. The key to transformation lies in the conscious act of integration, facing what has been denied, examining it without judgment, and finding ways to express it constructively. This does not mean giving in to every impulse without restraint. Rather, it means converting raw potential into deliberate, aligned action. The process of integration also requires self-reflection and honesty. It involves asking difficult questions. Which parts of myself have I hidden to be accepted? Which feelings have I labeled as wrong or bad? Which desires have I suppressed out of fear of judgment? Once identified, these traits can be reframed and practiced in ways that serve personal growth. Integration transforms fragmentation into wholeness. The aspects of ourselves that once felt chaotic, threatening, or inappropriate are now aligned with intention, allowing a person to operate from a place of completeness. It also strengthens resilience because energy that was previously wasted on repression is now available for creativity, problem solving, and connection. Furthermore, the integration of suppressed traits deepens self-awareness and authenticity. By embracing all dimensions of the self, light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, a person can act from a place of coherence, consistency, and power. What was once a source of internal conflict becomes a tool for expression, influence, and growth. Suppressed traits, when transformed through integration, become unique strengths that differentiate a person and amplify their capacity to navigate life with clarity and confidence. Ultimately, integration is not merely a psychological exercise. It is a path to freedom, allowing individuals to reclaim energy, expand potential, and live fully aligned with their true self. The qualities we once feared or denied are often the very ones that, when integrated, enable greatness, authenticity, and fulfillment. That many people spend their lives seeking approval from others. From childhood, social reinforcement teaches us that being liked, praised, and accepted is the path to safety and success. Compliments, recognition, and validation create a sense of worth that feels tangible, measurable, and safe. Yet this focus on approval can come at a steep cost: the gradual erosion of authenticity. When the pursuit of approval becomes the guiding principle of life, every choice, action, and expression is filtered through the lens of what others will accept or admire. Opinions are softened to avoid conflict, ambitions are muted to avoid jealousy, and emotions are hidden to avoid judgment. Over time, this creates a self that is performative, a carefully curated persona designed to meet the expectations of others rather than reflect the inner truth. Authentic alignment, on the other hand, is about living in accordance with one's values, principles, and unique sense of purpose. It is the conscious decision to act consistently with what feels true, meaningful, and right, regardless of whether it garners praise or approval. This does not mean acting recklessly or disregarding the impact on others, but it does mean placing the integrity of one as inner compass above external validation. Authentic alignment matters more than approval because it is sustainable, fulfilling, and empowering. Approval is fleeting. It depends on external perceptions, shifting moods, and changing cultural standards. A person can receive constant validation yet feel hollow, disconnected, or misaligned if their actions betray their own principle. Alignment, by contrast, creates a sense of coherence and inner peace. When actions match values, there is no internal conflict, no secret compromise, and no lingering regret. People who prioritize approval over alignment often find themselves living fragmented lives. They may achieve success in the eyes of others, but feel an underlying dissatisfaction, as if something vital is missing. Their decisions are guided by fear of rejection rather than clarity of purpose. Over time, this misalignment accumulates, leading to frustration, indecision, and even resentment toward themselves and the world around them. Choosing alignment requires courage. It requires the willingness to be misunderstood, criticized, or even rejected. Yet, it also builds resilience, clarity, and confidence, because the measure of success shifts from external applause to internal integrity. Authentic alignment enables a person to navigate life with purpose, make difficult decisions with confidence, and cultivate relationships that are genuine rather than conditional. When actions are aligned with the self, approval becomes optional. Praise may come or it may not, but it no longer dictates behavior or defines self-worth. The freedom that arises from prioritizing alignment allows individuals to explore their potential fully, embrace creativity, and act decisively. In the long term, authentic alignment fosters trust, respect, and meaningful influence far more than the shallow comfort of universal approval. Choosing approval over alignment is a temporary relief. Choosing alignment over approval is a lifelong investment in personal power, integrity, and fulfillment. Those who live aligned with their truth eventually discover that living authentically is its own reward, far surpassing the fleeting satisfaction of being liked. So today, I challenge you to stop shrinking to fit comfort, to stop hiding the parts of yourself that feel dangerous or too bold. Step into the fear, embrace the traits you've suppressed, and honor the truths you've long ignored. The version of yourself you are afraid to be is not reckless, it is alive, integrated, and powerful. Each time you choose authenticity over approval, courage over comfort, and alignment over fear, you reclaim a piece of yourself that was waiting to be fully expressed. Do not settle for a life half-lived, a self half-formed, or a potential half-realized. Become who you are afraid to be, and in doing so, you will no longer fear who you are meant to become.